For 7 years, Innovate Dynamics wasn't just my employer. It was my crucible. I was Elias Vance, employee number 23. The lead data architect who had joined when the company was little more than a charismatic CEO, a rented office space, and a bold idea that CEO was Marcus Thorne. He had the silver tongue and the $1 million smile. I had the skills to build the engine his smile sold. My domain was data, not just storing it, but understanding its soul. In a world drowning in information, I built the life rafts. My professional competence was undisputed. I could wrangle petabytes of unstructured data into elegant, queryable systems, while other engineers were still trying to configure their servers. My crowning achievement, the project that had consumed the last 3 years of my life, my nights, my weekends, my everything was codenamed Project Chimera. Chimera was a revolutionary data integration and analytics platform. It didn't just unify a company's disparate data sources from sales CRMs to IoT sensor logs. Used a proprietary machine learning layer to anticipate trends and identify operational inefficiencies before a human analyst even knew where to look. It was, without exaggeration, the future of enterprise intelligence. It was my life's work, and it was the reason Innovate Dynamics was on the cusp of a 9-figure initial public offering. The workplace harmony was, for the most part, genuine. We were a classic tech startup that had hit the big time. The early days of shared pizzas and coding marathons had evolved into sleek glass offices and catered lunches. But the core team still felt a sense of camaraderie. I had a good working relationship with Marcus. He'd clap me on the shoulder, call me his digital wizard, and tell investors I was the secret weapon he kept locked in the basement. I respected his ambition, and he, I thought, respected my creation. My direct team revered Chimera's architecture. Anya Sharma, my sharpest senior engineer, often said I didn't write code. I composed it. We were all pushing in the same direction, fueled by the promise of the IPO that would make us all millionaires. The betrayal came on a Tuesday. It was clinical, sterile, and brutally efficient. I was summoned to the 30th floor conference room, the one with a panoramic view of the city, the summit room, as Marcus called it. I assumed it was another pre-IPO strategy session. When I walked in, it wasn't the usual team. It was just Marcus, looking unusually somber in his tailored suit, and a woman I recognized as Elias Vance, no relation, a bitter irony. The company's notoriously ruthless head of legal. An unmarked, thick manila folder sat on the polished mahogany between them. "Elias, have a seat," Marcus began, his usual warmth replaced by a detached formality. "We've got a difficult subject to discuss." My mind raced. A technical glitch, a budget overrun. "As you know, the IPO roadshow begins in 2 weeks," he continued, steepling his fingers. "The underwriters are finalizing their due diligence, and we have to ensure the company is perfectly streamlined for public trading. That means making some tough organizational changes." Eleanor slid the folder toward me. "Elias, your employment with Innovate Dynamics is terminated, effective immediately." The words didn't compute. It felt like a line of corrupted code in an otherwise perfect program. Terminated? What are you talking about? Chimera's final integration tests are this week. The IPO is contingent on its launch. Marcus sighed, a theatrical display of reluctance. The project will continue, of course. It's critical to our Q4 projections. However, we're restructuring the data architecture division. Your role as it exists is being eliminated. You're eliminating the role of chief data architect, right before launching the most complex data platform this company has ever built. I felt a cold dread creeping up my spine. This wasn't a layoff. This was an execution. "We have a capable team," Marcus said dismissively. "Anya is more than ready to step up." Eleanor chimed in, her voice devoid of emotion. "Inside this folder, you will find your severance agreement. It's quite generous 3-month salary. and a 6-month COBRA subsidy. It is, of course, contingent on your signature of a comprehensive non-disclosure, non-compete, and non-disparagement agreement. I ignored the folder. My gaze was locked on Marcus. My stock options? They were scheduled to vest fully the day of the IPO. I had over 200,000 options granted at a strike price of pennies. At the projected IPO price, they were worth north of $8 million. It was the nest egg for my family, the payoff for 7 years of sacrifice. Marcus couldn't quite meet my eyes. He looked out the window at the cityscape. Your options are unvested, Elias, as per your employment contract upon termination. All invested options are forfeited and returned to the company pool. And there it was, the knife. The motive, $8 million. The professional devastation was absolute. But the personal gutting was worse. I looked at Marcus, the man I had trusted, the visionary I had helped build an empire for, and saw nothing but a hollowed-out suit. This is about Chimera, isn't it? My voice was low, shaking with a fury I could barely contain. The S-1 filing, with the SEC, who is listed as the inventor of the platform. Marcus finally turned back to me, his jaw tight. The platform is company work product, Elias. Innovate Dynamics owns the intellectual property. For the sake of a clean narrative for our investors, the platform, now officially branded Odyssey, is credited to our R&D division under my leadership as CEO. He didn't just fire me. He didn't just take my money. He stole my name. He erased me from my own creation, Odyssey, a name that reeked of a focus group. A soulless label slapped onto my masterpiece. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. I didn't shout, I didn't plead. Strange, terrifying calm washed over me. I see, your personal effects have been boxed up, Eleanor said, gesturing to the door. Security will escort you out. You have 24 hours to sign the severance agreement. Walked out of that room, a ghost in the halls I had practically built. As I was escorted past my team's glass-walled workspace, I saw them all gathered around Anya, who was looking at a monitor with a shocked expression. Marcus was probably already in there, spinning his tale of necessary restructuring. I was erased. The final insult was the box waiting for me at the security desk. My worn coffee mug, a few coding manuals, a picture of my wife and daughter. 7 years of my life reduced to a cardboard box. My keycard was deactivated. My accounts were locked. I was an outsider. That night, sleep was impossible. The betrayal churned in my gut like acid. The injustice of it was a physical weight. I had poured my very essence into Chimera. I had designed its architecture on napkins in the middle of the night. I had debugged its core functions while my daughter took her first steps. And Marcus Thorne had ripped it all away for a cleaner narrative and a fatter bottom line. I tried the official channels. The next morning, I called a lawyer. He was sympathetic but blunt. "Okay, Elias, your employment contract almost certainly has a clause assigning all IP created during your employment to the company. You were an employee at will. I can fire you for a good reason, a bad reason, or no reason at all. It's taking your options before they vest. Brutal, but standard practice. It's an ironclad case, ... for them." My attempts to contact the board of directors were stonewalled by gatekeeping executive assistants. HR was a black hole. I was a non-person. Lying in bed that second night, staring at the ceiling, the image of Marcus's smug face swam in the darkness. He thought he had one. He thought he had taken everything. He had my code, my reputation. It's my money, but he didn't know everything about my code. Deep in the foundational layers of Chimera layers, so complex I was certain no one else at the company, not even Anya, fully understood them, lay a small, elegant, and completely undocumented module. I had built it years ago, during a paranoid phase. It's as a form of creator verification and a nuclear option against exactly this kind of corporate piracy. It was a dead man's switch. A data integrity protocol I called the Eschaton Clause. It wasn't. A virus. It wasn't malware. It was far more subtle. On its own, it did nothing. It was dormant, invisible, a ghost in the machine. But if activated by a unique cryptographically signed key only I possessed it, would begin a systematic cascading process of data degradation. It wouldn't crash the system, would make the system lie. Financial projections would be off by a few decimal points. Inventory counts would be subtly mismatched. Customer data would slowly but surely desynchronize. It would turn Odyssey, the engine of their IPO, into a self-destructing labyrinth of misinformation. It was designed to be untraceable to an outside hack, looking like a catastrophic internal failure of the system's core architecture. An architecture only one person could have fixed. A cold smile touched my lips in the darkness. Marcus Thorne had stolen my work, was about to discover he had stolen a time bomb. He wanted a clean narrative for his IPO, was going to give him a spectacular, unforgettable ending. Justice wouldn't be found in a courtroom. 'Twould be delivered by compiler. The first week was a blur of impotent rage and forced calm. I went through the motions of seeking justice the right way, primarily to build a record of their intransigence. I sent a carefully worded, registered letter to the board of directors, outlining my foundational role in creating Project Chimera and protesting my unjust termination. The response was a 2-sentence letter from Elias Vance, stating the company stood by its decision and reminding me of my ongoing obligations under the NDA I signed when I was hired. It was a legal back-off. My next step was to probe the enemy's defenses. I spent hours dissecting the S1 filing Innovate. Dynamics had submitted to the SEC. It was a masterpiece of corporate fiction. The document, hundreds of pages long, detailed the company's financials, market strategy, and risks. The centerpiece was Odyssey. They described it in glowing terms, using much of the language from my own internal project proposals. And there it was in black and white, the Odyssey platform. A proprietary system developed in-house under the visionary leadership of our CEO. Marcus Thorne represents a quantum leap in enterprise data intelligence. My name was nowhere. Was a ghost, but reading the technical appendix gave me my first glimmer of hope. The descriptions were superficial. They understood what Chimera did, but not how. The language was vague, full of marketing buzzwords like synergy and paradigm shift, where precise architectural details should have been. It was like someone describing a combustion engine as the metal box that makes the car go. They didn't have a clue how deep the rabbit hole went. This was my first leverage point. Their ignorance thought the second leverage point came from an unexpected source. I needed eyes and ears inside the company. I needed an ally. There was only one person I could trust, Anya Sharma. She was brilliant, ethical, and had worked closely with me on Chimera's most complex modules. She knew my work, and I hoped she knew me. Getting to her was tricky. I couldn't email or call her. Corporate security would be monitoring all communications. I went old school. I waited near the artisan coffee shop she frequented every morning before work. When she came out, holding her usual flat white, I stepped out from an alcove. Elias. She nearly dropped her coffee. What are you doing here? They told us you left for a family emergency. A family emergency called Marcus Thorne, I said grimly. Can we talk? 5 minutes. Off the record, her eyes darted around nervously. I don't know if I should. They made us all sign a new NDA addendum the day you left, specifically about you and the project. The project he's now calling Odyssey. I asked, a bitter taste in my mouth that hit a nerve. Her expression hardened. That was ... disgusting. We all know it's Chimera. We all know it's yours. She motioned toward a nearby park bench. 5 minutes. I laid it out for her. The firing, the stolen options, the erasure of my name from the S1. I didn't mention the Eschaton Clause. I couldn't risk it. I just presented myself as a man who had been wronged and was looking for a way to prove it. I knew it was something like that. she said, shaking her head. Marcus gave us a big speech about streamlining for the future. It felt hollow. Elias, the system is unstable. My heart leaped. What do you mean? It's not crashing, but it's glitchy, she explained, her voice low. We're seeing weird anomalies in the data staging areas. Ghost data. Records that appear and then vanish. Mismatched timestamps that correct themselves hours later. The new lead, some guy from a competitor, thinks it's a load balancing issue. He's got the team chasing their tails, rewriting network protocols. But it feels deeper than that. It feels architectural. I knew exactly what it was. These were the faintest tremors of the Eschaton Clause's dormant state. It was designed with a passive low-level heartbeat that performed checksums on itself. The new code they were bolting on top of my pristine architecture was likely creating conflicts that the heartbeat was trying to autocorrect, causing the flickers she was seeing. They were interpreting a fundamental design feature as a bug. They were amateurs trying to hot trot a Formula One car. Kanya, I need your help, I said, my voice steady. Kanya, I'm not asking you to sabotage anything. I just need information. Memos, internal bug reports, status updates. Anything that shows the instability and, more importantly, their inability to fix it. She was hesitant. Elias, this is my career. The IPO ... double quotes is built on a lie, I finished for her. He didn't just steal from me, Anya. He's defrauding your future. Employer of the public shareholders. This entire IPO is predicated on a platform they don't understand and can't control. What do you think happens 6 months post-IPO when the glitches become catastrophic failures? The stock will tank. There will be lawsuits. Everyone's paper millions will evaporate. He's not just risking my future. He's risking yours. I saw the conflict in her eyes, loyalty, fear, and a fierce sense of professional ethics. It was the last one, that one. Okay, she whispered. I'll help. I'll use a personal email encrypted. Anya became my lifeline. Over the next week, she fed me a steady stream of documents through a secure email service. Bug reports escalated from minor anomaly to critical priority. Memos from the new lead grew increasingly frantic. The ghost data problem was getting worse, and Marcus was applying immense pressure, demanding they fix the issues before their final presentation to a consortium of major institutional investors in Zurich. Just 5 days before the IPO, the scope of their wrongdoing was becoming clearer. They weren't just incompetent. I think they were actively concealing the platform's instability from the underwriters. This was fraud. But I still needed my smoking gun. I needed irrefutable proof that Chimera was mine, something more concrete than Anya's. Testimony. The answer lay buried in the digital graveyard of Innovate's old development servers. Before we migrated to our current cloud infrastructure, we used a series of on-premise servers for early-stage development. I knew for a fact they were never properly decommissioned. It was one of those low-priority IT tasks that always gets pushed. I had a hunch. One of the junior developers on the original Chimera team, a kid named David Chen, was a stickler for documentation. He documented everything, including code snippets, architectural diagrams, and even my whiteboard ramblings. I had once jokingly told him he was my Boswell. He had left the company a year ago for a FAANG job. I needed to access that old server. From the outside, it was impossible. But I still had a backdoor, not into the main network, but into the server's own administrative OS. It was a fail-safe I had built for remote diagnostics years ago. Using a non-standard port and a key pair, authentication method I was certain no one else knew existed. It was a long shot. They might have physically disconnected it late one night, fueled by caffeine and adrenaline. I sat at my home computer and ran a port scan script aimed at the old server's last known static IP. For hours, there was nothing. Then, a single port responded. Port 31337. A little joke for myself. My heart hammered against my ribs. I initiated the SSH connection, presented my private key, and held my breath. Authentication successful. Welcome to DEV's RV04. I was in. I felt a surge of triumph. It was like finding a secret passage back into my own stolen castle. I navigated through the dusty file directories, a digital archaeologist digging for a fossil. I found David Chen's old user directory, and inside it, a folder labeled Chimera_arch_docs.I opened the most recent file. It was a comprehensive document, over 200 pages detailing the core logic of Chimera. David had obsessively screen captured my design diagrams, transcribed my explanations, and linked everything to specific code commits. And then I saw it. On page 147, under the heading Core Integrity Module, was a section David had written, Elias's Eschaton failsafe. Elias has implemented a deeply embedded data integrity verification protocol. He calls it his Eschaton Clause. He described it as a truth engine that ensures the system cannot be fundamentally altered or misused without the original architect's signature. Below is the pseudocode he outlined on the whiteboard on October 11th, 2023. It was all there. The logic, the purpose, the name. Documented by a third party, time-stamped, and sitting on the company's own server. This was the proof. This was the murder weapon with my fingerprints on the blueprints and his on the handle. I downloaded the entire directory, encrypted it, and backed it up in 3 separate locations. The investigation was over. I had the motive, I had the means, and now I had the evidence. The planning phase was over. Now it was time to build the guillotine. With the evidence secured, the red mist of anger began to recede, replaced by the cold, clear focus of an architect designing a demolition. My revenge couldn't be a simple act of destruction. It had to be a performance. It needed to be precise, public, and proportional. Marcus had tried to professionally execute me in the quiet of a boardroom. I would professionally execute him in the full glare of the global financial market. My strategy rested on a 2-pronged attack, a pincer movement of technology and information. Prong 1. The technical execution. This was the Eschaton Clause. I wouldn't activate it randomly. The timing had to be perfect for maximum psychological and financial impact. The IPO was scheduled for a Friday. The bell-ringing ceremony at the NASDAQ, with Marcus and the board front and center, was set for 9:30 a.m. EST. The roadshow in Zurich, their final pitch to the big money, was the Tuesday before. My plan was to let them have their moment in Zurich. Let them sell the dream, secure in their deception. The degradation would begin subtly on Wednesday, the day after. Small, explainable errors. Enough to cause panic within their engineering team, but not enough to alert the public or the underwriters. It's the real cascade. The full catastrophic data corruption would be triggered at 9:31 a.m. EST on Friday, exactly 1 minute after the opening bell, just as the champagne corks were popping. Prong 2. The information offensive, destroying the platform, wasn't enough. I needed to control the narrative to ensure everyone knew exactly who was responsible for the collapse and why. My evidence package was the key. Contained David Chen's documentation of the Eschaton Clause, proving my authorship, a detailed log of my SSH access to the old server, proving the file was pre-existing and not planted, the frantic internal bug reports and memos from Anya, proving their knowledge of the platform's instability and their intent to defraud investors, a personal, signed affidavit detailing my termination, the theft of my IP, and the timeline of events. I needed to get this package into the right hands at the right time. Not a lawyer that would get bogged down in discovery. Not the SEC directly. That would be too slow. I needed a journalist, a shark, someone with a reputation for breaking major corporate malfeasance stories and the platform to make it go global in an instant. After 2 days of research, I found my target, Julianne Croft at The Wall Street Journal, Her byline was a death sentence for corrupt CEOs. The preparation phase began. I spent Monday refining the Eschaton Clause's activation script. I didn't want a simple on-off switch. I built a phased, time-locked trigger. Stage 1 would initiate. Minor data skewing a 0.01% deviation in financial calculations. A slight desynchronization in inventory logs. It would be triggered automatically on Wednesday morning. Stage 2, the full cascade, was more complex. It would corrupt critical databases, sever links between data tables, and start injecting null values into customer records. This stage would be triggered manually by a single encrypted packet sent from my machine to a hidden listener on Innovate's cloud servers. It was untraceable, unstoppable, and irreversible without the deactivation key, which was safely stored on a hardware wallet. In a bank vault. The obstacles were already mounting. Anya's messages grew more desperate. Marcus is bringing in outside consultants. She texted me late Monday night. Top-tier data recovery specialists. They're starting tomorrow. They think it's a hardware issue in the server cluster. This was a complication. These specialists were competent. While they wouldn't find the Eschaton Clause was designed to mimic architectural flaws. Not malicious code, they might recommend a full system rollback to an earlier stable build. That would wipe out the dormant code. I had a window of maybe 48 hours before they stumbled upon a solution that would neutralize my weapon. The Zurich presentation was on Tuesday. The consultants were starting Wednesday. The clock was ticking. I had to accelerate the plan. The subtle degradation had to be impactful enough to distract the new consultants, to send them down the wrong rabbit hole. I adjusted the stage 1 parameters, increasing the data skew to a more noticeable 0.5%. It was riskier, but necessary. It would look like the hardware issue was getting worse, focusing their attention on the physical infrastructure while my digital time bomb ticked away silently in the software layer. With the technical plan solidified, I focused on Julianne Croft. I created a new, anonymous Proton Mail account and sent her a short cryptic message. Subject: the hollow core of the Innovate Dynamics IPO. Croft, you don't know me, but I'm the ghost in the machine of the biggest tech IPO of the year. The entire valuation of Innovate Dynamics is based on a fraudulent platform called Odyssey. I have irrefutable proof that the CEO, Marcus Thorne, stole the technology and is actively concealing critical system failures from investors. The entire edifice is set to collapse. I will provide you with a fully documented exclusive. If you are interested, respond with the word verify. 2 hours later, a reply landed in my inbox. A single word: verify. I didn't send the package yet. That was my trump card. I replied, the proof will be delivered to you at 9 a.m. EST this Friday. You will have 30 minutes to review before the market opens and the system publicly demonstrates its own fraudulence. The story will write itself. This created a deadline and an air of inevitability. She was hooked. Tuesday came and went, Anya confirmed. The Zurich Roadshow was a resounding success. Marcus, brimming with confidence, had wowed the European investors. They were celebrating back at HQ. My blood ran cold, but I held my nerve. My plan was in motion Wednesday morning. 8 a.m. ST, I triggered stage 1. Anya's first message arrived. At 10:15 a.m., it's happening. The reporting dashboards are all off. Not by much, but it's consistent across the board. The consultants are baffled. They're blaming solar flares, cosmic rays, everything but the code. Marcus is furious, yelling at everyone to fix it before the IPO. Perfect. They were looking at the sky while the rot was spreading under their feet. Throughout Wednesday and Thursday, I received a running commentary of the chaos. The consultants, convinced it was a deep-seated hardware or network issue, ordered a complete rewiring of a server rack. A pointless, expensive, and time-consuming exercise. They were busy chasing ghosts, just as I had planned. The deception. was holding. By Thursday evening, the company was in a state of controlled panic. Marcus had put a gag order on all internal communications, but Anya told me the atmosphere was toxic. The engineering team was exhausted and demoralized. The consultants were stumped, and yet the IPO was still on track. Marcus was too arrogant, too pot-committed to pull out now. He believed he could power through, fix the glitches after the bell after his payday. His pride and greed were my greatest allies. Thursday night, I finalized the package for Julianne Croft. I uploaded the encrypted zip file to a secure drop site. The password was Chimera. I drafted the email, ready to be sent at 8:59 a.m. the next morning. I checked my trigger script one last time. Everything was ready. It's a single line of code that would send the activation packet. Felt like the weight of the world under my fingertip. I barely slept. I was no longer just a victim. I had become a saboteur, a corporate insurgent. The moral complexity of my actions was not lost on me. I was about to incinerate billions of dollars in shareholder value, potentially costing innocent employees their jobs. But then I pictured Marcus's smug face on the NASDAQ podium, cashing in on my life's work while my family's future was in jeopardy. The doubt vanished. This wasn't just revenge. It was a market correction. It was justice. I was ready for the final confrontation. It wouldn't be in a boardroom. It would be on the world stage, and he wouldn't even see me coming. Friday morning arrived with an almost cinematic stillness. Sky was a crisp, clear blue. Was the kind of perfect day that corporate marketing brochures are made of. For Marcus Thorne, it was supposed to be the day of his coronation. Me, it was Judgment Day. I was set up in my home office, which I now referred to as Command and Control. On one monitor, I had a live feed of the NASDAQ opening bell ceremony. On another, Anya's encrypted chat window was open. A third displayed the terminal window with my trigger script, the cursor blinking like a patient metronome. 8:59 a.m. EST. My finger hovered over the Enter key. I sent the email to Julianne Croft at the Wall Street Journal. Subject, the hollow core of the Innovate Dynamics IPO Croft, as promised. The password is Chimera. Check the system at 9:31 a.m. Happy hunting. The package was away. The die was cast. 9:15 a.m. EST. The NASDAQ feed came alive. There was Marcus, front and center on the podium, beaming. He was surrounded by the board of directors, all of them wearing triumphant smiles. Oh, he was holding the ceremonial gavel, ready to ring the bell that would unleash his fraudulent company onto the public market. Oh, he looked invincible. Anya's message popped up. They're all watching the feed in the main conference room. Champagne is on ice. No one has a clue. The consultants think they've isolated the problem to a faulty network switch. They're replacing it now. They're fools. 9:29 a.m. EST. The countdown began on the giant screen behind Marcus. The crowd on the trading floor cheered. Marcus raised the gavel, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated hubris. 9 hours, 30 minutes, and 0 seconds EST. The bell rang. Confetti cannons erupted. The ticker symbol for Innovate Dynamics, INVD, flashed onto the screen. Opening at $28 per share, already above its IPO price of $25. Marcus was hugging his board members. He had done it 9 hours, 30 minutes, and 30 seconds EMS. I took a deep breath. My hands were steady. My resolve was iron. I placed my finger on the Enter key. 9 hours, 31 minutes, and 0 seconds AM, EST. I pressed Enter. The script executed in less than a second. A single, perfectly formed packet, wrapped in layers of encryption, shot from my server, bounced through a series of anonymous proxies, and found its hidden listener on Innovate's primary cloud instance. The packet dissolved, its payload delivered. The key had turned the lock. The Eschaton Clause was awake. For the first minute, nothing happened on the NASDAQ feed. Stock ticked up to $28.50. Marcus was now giving an interview to a business news anchor talking about a new era of data-driven decision-making. Then, a message from Anya, all caps. "Oh my God, Elias, I tease a blood-bath. Simultaneously." The first sign of trouble appeared on the news ticker at the bottom of the screen. NVD trading volatility halt imminent. Anya's messages became a frantic stream. The customer dashboards are blank, all of them. The financial reporting system is spitting out negative numbers. The core database is not responding. It's not down, it's just ... gone. The consultants are screaming at each other. They have no idea what's happening. On the live feed, the anchor was getting urgent messages in her earpiece. Her professional smile faltered. "Mr. Thorne, we're getting reports of some technical difficulties with the Odyssey platform's live clients. Can you comment?" Marcus's smile tightened. Launch day jitters are to be expected with a platform of this complexity. Our world-class engineering team is on it. But his eyes betrayed a flicker of panic. He was looking off camera, presumably, at an aide who was now ashen-faced. The stock ticker for INVD had frozen, then reappeared with a new price, $19. It was plummeting in after-hours trading as institutional algorithms reacted to the system outage. And then, the real twist, the one even I hadn't fully anticipated, began. To unfold, my clause wasn't just deleting data. It was designed to leave behind a specific digital signature, a breadcrumb trail that led back to the original architecture. But as it ripped through the code, it uncovered something else. It found the shoddy patchwork code that Marcus's new team had bolted on top of Chimera. My elegant system was rejecting the crude transplant. Anya's next message was the key. "Elias, this is insane." The system logs aren't just showing errors. They're showing conflicts between two different core libraries. One is Chimera's. The other looks like a cheap open-source imitation. They didn't just rename your work. They tried to copy parts of it and failed, creating a Frankenstein's monster. This was the ultimate poetic justice. Marcus hadn't just stolen my car. He'd tried to install a cheap engine next to my finely tuned one. And my system had just self-diagnosed the foreign tissue and was now violently expelling it at 9:45 a.m. EST. The bomb dropped. The Wall Street Journal homepage updated. The headline was a cannon shot, Innovate Dynamics, IPO implodes amidst allegations of fraud. IP theft. Leaked docs show CEO Marcus Thorne stole core tech, concealed system failures. Julianne Croft's article was a masterpiece of journalistic destruction. It had everything: David Chen's document, my affidavit, Anya's internal memos. It laid out the entire conspiracy in meticulous, undeniable detail. It even mentioned the Eschaton Clause by name. The NASDAQ feed cut away from a sputtering, speechless Marcus Thorne. The trading on INVD was officially halted. The board members were no longer smiling. They were staring at their phones, their faces turning from elation to horror. The final confrontation wasn't face-to-face, it was better. It was an emergency board meeting called via Zoom at 11 a.m. I knew it was coming. My lawyer, the one who had initially told me my case was hopeless, called me in a state of shock. "Elias, the board of Innovate Dynamics is requesting your presence at an emergency meeting." They sound desperate. I joined the call from my home office. Face appeared on the screen, a grid of shocked and furious faces staring back at me. Marcus was there, his face pale and haggard. He looked 10 years older than he had 2 hours earlier. Elias Vance, the cold-hearted lawyer, looked like she had seen a ghost. Mr. Vance, the chairman of the board, a grizzled old venture capitalist named Peterson, began, his voice grim. "We have a situation, a catastrophic one." I remained silent. I let him talk. "The platform is ... gone. The journal article, is it true?" "Every word of it," I said calmly, including the part about the Eschaton Clause, which, as you can see, works exactly as designed. Marcus finally spoke. his voice a venomous hiss. "You did this. You sabotaged my company. This is criminal. Your company." I replied, my voice dangerously soft. "Let's be very clear, Marcus. You don't have a company. You have a shell built around a stolen engine. An engine you broke because you were too arrogant to admit you didn't know how it worked. You didn't just steal Chimera. You tried to mutilate it, and it defended itself. I didn't destroy the platform. I simply triggered a verification protocol that proved it wasn't yours." I shared my screen. I brought up the server logs Anya had sent me, highlighting the warring libraries. "This, gentlemen, is the proof of fraud. Not just the theft, but the cover-up. The ghost data your experts were chasing. That was my system trying to heal itself from the garbage code you injected. You weren't launching a revolutionary product. You were launching an unstable time bomb, and the clock just ran out." Silence. Complete and utter devastation on the faces of the board. They knew they were ruined. "Is there a way to fix it?" Peterson asked, his voice almost a plea. "Yes," I said, "there is. I have the deactivation key and the architectural knowledge too. Rebuild the database from the corrupted fragments. I can restore everything." A flicker of hope in their eyes. Marcus looked at me, a glimmer of his old manipulative charm returning. "Elias, ... we can fix this. Name your price. We can make this right." "Oh, we will make it right," I said, leaning into my camera. "Here's my price. First, Marcus Thorne will tender his resignation, effective immediately, for cause forfeiting all his shares and compensation. Second, the company will issue a public statement admitting to the intellectual property theft and crediting me as the sole architect of the Chimera platform. Third, full ownership of the Chimera Odyssey IP, patents, and all related assets will be legally transferred to a new company of which I will be the sole proprietor. And fourth, my 200,000 options will be immediately vested and paid out at the original IPO price of $25 a share. It's a consulting fee for fixing the mess you created." Elias Vance gasped. That's extortion." "No, Eleanor," I corrected her. "That's the severance package you should have offered me in the first place. You have 1 hour to send me a signed term sheet. Otherwise, I suggest you get very good at explaining to the SE and your shareholders why you let your CEO build a $500 million company on a lie. The clock is ticking." Again, I ended the call. The execution was complete. The king was deposed. The kingdom was in ruins. And I was holding the key to rebuild it in my own image. The hour that followed was the longest of my life. I sat in my quiet office, the adrenaline slowly giving way to a profound sense of exhaustion and vindication. The world outside my window was oblivious, but in the rarefied air of high-tech finance, a supernova had just occurred. 57 minutes later, an email arrived from Peterson, the chairman. Attached was a scanned PDF, a term sheet, hastily drafted by a shell-shocked Elias Vance, agreeing to every one of my demands. The consequences for my antagonists were swift and brutal. Marcus Thorne was gone. His resignation was announced an hour later, citing personal reasons. But the Journal and every other major financial news outlet immediately connected the dots. His golden parachute was gone. His reputation was incinerated. He went from being the next Steve Jobs to a cautionary tale, a corporate Icarus whose wings of arrogance and deceit had melted in the public glare. Last I heard, he was facing a litany of class action lawsuits and a formal investigation by the SEC. The IPO was, of course, canceled. The underwriters pulled out and Innovate Dynamics became radioactive. Its stock, which had briefly touched the sky, was now worthless. The company was forced into a massive downsizing, laying off most of the sales and marketing teams Marcus had hired. It was a tragedy for them, the one part of my revenge that brought me no satisfaction. It was a sobering reminder that in corporate warfare, there are always civilian casualties. My own trajectory was the mirror opposite. Over the next 2 weeks, guided by a team of lawyers now falling over themselves to represent me, the terms were formalized. The 8-figure payout for my consulting fee landed in my bank account. The intellectual property for Chimera was transferred to my newly incorporated entity, Phoenix Data Systems. A fitting name, I thought. Anya Sharma, who had risked her career for me, resigned from the smoldering ruins of Innovate Dynamics the day after the IPO disaster. The first person I hired at Phoenix Data was her, my chief technology officer, with a generous salary and a significant equity stake. The core engineering team that had respected my work soon followed. My professional vindication was absolute. The story became a legend in Silicon Valley, a stark warning to high-flying executives who believed they were above the code, both legal and computational. My competence, once erased from a legal document, was now the stuff of headlines. I wasn't the digital wizard in the basement anymore. I was the architect who had held a titan to account. Looking back, the moral calculus of my actions is still complex. I crossed ethical lines. I took the law into my own hands and executed a plan that caused widespread financial damage. I became a saboteur, a vengeful god in my own machine. But as I sit here today in the corner office of my own thriving company, looking at the architectural diagrams for Phoenix, the next generation of Chimera, I feel no regret. The system failed me. The legal channels, the corporate hierarchy, the men in expensive suits, they were all designed to protect the powerful from the just. Marcus Thorne didn't just betray me. He betrayed the very idea of meritocracy that our industry purports to champion. He believed he could take a man's life's work and suffer no consequences. My revenge was not just about money or retribution. It was about restoring a fundamental balance. It was a validation of my skill, a public proof of my worth that no boardroom could ever erase. I found closure not in forgiveness, but in justice. Our justice I had to code into existence myself. The world of corporate power is a brutal, unforgiving landscape. I was pushed into the wilderness, and I survived by becoming a more intelligent predator. My professional life was reborn from the ashes of Innovate Dynamics, stronger, wiser, and entirely my own. And that is a satisfaction no amount of money can buy.